I fondly remember when I was in high school. It was common during the opening week for teachers to ask their students to introduce themselves in front of the class. For the most part, it astutely followed the standard protocols of questioning: name, hobby, and where do you see yourself in the future? Straightforward and basic. But when it came my turn to answer, I always made it extra complicated than it ever needed to be. With the first two questions, I was fine. But on the third one, that was where the turn came. These are what my classmates customarily answered. As for myself, without hesitation, my response to that question was consistently in the effect of, I did not want to think about adulthood, a world where you have to prove your worth at every waking second, to everybody. To be strong, confident, and logical at all times. That was a speed too quick for me. I couldn't grasp or get a hold of it. When I was born, my parents were already in their mid 40s. My older and only brother was nearly in high school. My cousins, teenagers. Their lives were set at that point. They were established. The older I got as a kid, the heavier I noticed how wide the age gap between myself and my relatives was. The whole dynamic was something I had difficulty shaking off. I identified as unnecessary. Initiating friendships wasn't quite my major in college. Whenever I conversed with anyone I seldom kept in touch with, or whenever I was meeting anyone for the first time, my inside self destructed in apprehension. It was rooted in a feeling that if someone got to know me to a great extent, the quicker they would figure me out and lose interest altogether. I was afraid of getting discovered as boring, dispensable, and rancid. That inadequacy was the prelude to a handful of missed opportunities, experiences, and memories, the ingredients for wasted time, and subsequently, bitterness and regret. Nostalgia is not a reliable friend to turn to in a time of contemplation. There's more to nostalgia than what we know it as today. It's not as simple as having a fondness for the past. In the 17th to 19th centuries, they considered nostalgia a psychopathological disorder. The disease was comparable to paranoia, but the sufferer was manic with longing. At that period, soldiers would self diagnose themselves with nostalgia just to have an excuse from going into bloody battle, and they usually got their way. It was understood. To cure this intangible disease, French doctors and American scientists in the past have attempted a myriad of dubious procedures to combat it, ranging from death threats, prayer, and using actual leeches to suck the nostalgia out. Simply put, people then were clueless on how to handle the situation. 3 centuries had gone, and I was as oblivious about it as they were before. A day didn't go by when I didn't daydream about the yesteryears, wishing to get back the time lost on wallowing around. Had I possibly been more present in my past, maybe I would have been certain of where I'm heading. Desperate times called for desperate measures. Time travel was something I contemplated. But after a few seconds of looking at the different possibilities, time, as I keep forgetting, is just a series of diminishing photographs. Once something is done, it's done. We can never get it back in the same shape or form. It was impossible to go back in time to change things. I couldn't manipulate time. That was until I stumbled into a profound study. For over a century, experts have determined that time and space are interlinked, better known as special relativity. According to this theory, the faster one moves, the slower it experiences time. And because of that, I realized that time was indeed malleable, despite the unreliability of conventional time travel. Maybe time travel does exist, just not in the ways I had imagined. Maybe there's still a way for me to manipulate time. An example would be temperature. The higher our body temperature is, the faster we perceive time. The same can be said with music. Listening to the music we like will equate to a quicker passage of time. Another would be our neural activity, how stimuli and neurotransmitters affect our perception of time. When we are happy, many neurotransmitters are involved, such as dopamine, serotonin, or even oxytocin. This can lead to a euphoric type state, leaving us more attentive to the things we care about and less to time itself. Hence, time seems to accelerate or decelerate depending on an individual's action or inaction. It's similar to comparing 12 hours spent with your friends at the mall to the same 12 hours being alone in your room. It's all relative and controllable. The perception of the past can still change. When at any moment I get overwhelmed, I exile myself for a long walk. I find serenity in walking, to move at your own pace, to take in the diegetic sounds, to observe the people going about their evening. But before that, before I leave the house for my walk, my mother would regularly stop me in my tracks to ask a question. The same one each time. Where do you plan to go? And over, my answer has been. However, to determine a specific route or direction in advance, when whim and circumstance have a say, would be disingenuous. Things, as I have come to comprehend, can and will change. And as I think about it now, when posed with a similar question once again, the more accurate answer should likely be